Hi guys, I'm going to talk a little bit about the definition mode of writing, and this is obviously more than just your basic dictionary definition, although a standard definition like what you would see in a dictionary can be incorporated in an essay, and oftentimes you might write a definition essay in order to expand upon a basic definition, especially if you're looking at something like an abstract concept. So maybe like love, family, success, something like that. And even further, if there is a definition that you find to be problematic or confusing, then a definition essay can incorporate that standard definition so that you can highlight how you would maybe change the definition or something along those lines. So really, for the most part, what we're talking about here is an extended definition. And this is where your essay is explaining the meaning of a word or a concept or a term. You might find that you have to do short versions of definitions in science, history, things like that. Beyond just, a one sentence definition, you might have to really explain what something is and how it works, and you might be pulling in elements of process analysis, you might be pulling in elements of compare and contrast, but really, for the most part, a definition essay that is an extended essay helps your reader better understand a concept, the meaning of a term, or some kind of abstract notion like love, hate, anger, something like that. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning here is that, when we're writing a definition essay, not only can you explain what something is, but in pulling out some of those compare and contrast elements, you might be able to explain what something is not. So that can help someone better understand the definition of or a word. So if you're writing an essay on family, you can say, you might say family's not only blood relatives. Family can also include your dog or your cat or your best friends or people who aren't blood related to you but are still a part of your family. In terms of writing a definition essay, I think really the best thing to do is to pick whatever, if you're going to write a definition essay for our upcoming essay, pick your subject matter and then start kind of like brainstorming the categories of how you're going to define that word. And so you might have the standard definition, you might have sort of like your personal interpretation of that definition. You might also have the connotation. So denotation is your formal dictionary definition, but connotations are what something implies. Maybe that's emotional, maybe that's informal. That could even be sort of how a word is being used in a slang sense. And oftentimes, and you'll see this if you plan on studying literature in any way, all of the meanings of a word and all of the associated meanings and associations of a word can really help to add meaning to a word that might not already exist. And all of those meanings are working all of the time, even if you don't know that they're there, or even if you don't intend for them to be there. I think the example here, example 1, rat, obviously a rat, according to the dictionary, the denotation of it is a rodent, a little critter, right? But if you call someone a rat, then you think of the connotation of that word, and that's sort of like someone who's kind of sleazy, or as this says, undesirable or dishonest. You say, oh, he's a rat, or she's a rat, although I think most of the time men get the connotative definition of rat. But that's, someone who's just does the things that are associated with rodents, right? If you think about it, a rodent goes and eats from the trash can and carries germs on ships and all those things. All of the connotations and the associations of the actual rodent get applied to when we call like a human a rat. Or the other connotative meaning here would be someone who's like tattletaling on other people. The other example is card. Obviously, that is just a physical object, but there are other specific connotations if you say, can you show me your card, something like that. The cards in his hand might not necessarily be physical cards. They might be sort of like the idea that there is something up his sleeve, or he's going to be manipulating the situation in some way. So your definition essay can talk about denotations, connotations, and also personal interpretations. So here the two are success and beauty. Even if you are defining something like a good husband or a good wife or a good or a studious child or something like that, a good student, what does it mean to be good in this category or criteria? You might not necessarily be using connotations and denotations, but more so your personal interpretation. And these, I think, personal interpretations fit really, really well with abstract concepts, whereas denotation and connotation fit well with nouns and words that are usually specific, but also used in roundabout ways to explain a characteristic of someone or something like that. I think that example number 1 from these slides is a bit strange. Like, I don't think you would write a 4-page essay defining the object axe. Now, there are probably objects in which you could define that would take a bit of time and thus a little bit of length for a paper, but something so simple as a tool like an axe, I don't think is the best example. Let me think of a good example for you where you would have some kind of object, but that requires more than 1 or 2 lines of definition. I really can't think of a good example. If you guys can think of an example, email me and I'll send it out to the class. Machismo, though, is a really great example because it talks about inflated male ego, but I think that also it's something like a characteristic that you see in certain cultures, a prized characteristic that you see in certain cultures, and so there might even be a characteristic that you can define that's specific to again, it would be specific to your personal experience, but it might even be specific to your culture, your home life, or your history or heritage or something like that. And so again, there might be some kind of abstract characteristic that would apply for you too. No matter what you pick to define, your paragraphs and your essay structure is going to fit in the same pattern that we have talked about all semester long. In your introduction, you've got a hook or a lead-in or an attention grabber, whatever you want to call it. In here, you should introduce your subject matter, transition using background information into your thesis statement. If you are pulling out an extended definition essay where you're really kind of looking at an abstract concept or something that requires a heavy exploration of connotation, then maybe in that background information you would provide just the denotation or the dictionary definition. Then you would get into your thesis statement that's going to present your subject and the focal points you will address throughout your definition essay. In your body paragraphs, again, same structure. Start with a topic sentence. Take each kind of like split, like I said before, when you pick your subject matter and then you start to think about the different categories of how you're going to define that subject matter, you should kind of stick to one topic per body paragraph. Then your topic sentence should present sort of what you're going to focus on in that paragraph. Provide all your supporting details. These can be stories, these can be descriptions. I think definition and description mode of writing go really hand in hand. Again, there might be a whole body paragraph devoted to what something is not. For example, if you pick love to define, You can explain what love is not in a paragraph, and there's sort of like a compare and contrast happening there. And you just kind of work through your body paragraphs one like subject at a time. In your conclusion, what is the significance of this? This is the big question. Like, what is the point in defining this term in a new way or in your own way? Why does it matter? And that's, I think, goes back to the trouble I was having with writing an essay about what an axe is. Why would you do that? Why would anyone need to define in an extended way a tool such as an axe? Now, if you can do that and find an answer for me, go for it. But if there is no purpose for writing, then the conclusion is going to be very, very difficult, I think, to pull together and unify your essay. So these are just some ideas here on a definition essay. Of course, this is supplement to the reading in your textbook. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate, send me an email.